Hello, my name is Mark Pena. This video is for Econ Development or Econ 366, Section 1. Honduras is a nation that is located in Central America and has experienced high growth rates. In fact, Honduras growth rates have actually surpassed the average level of growth rates in Latin America and the Caribbean. However, it's one of the most poorest, most unequal nations in the whole world. And you might be asking yourself, why is this? And because of this, today we'll be discussing Honduras' economic development, more specifically the factors that influence the current state of economic development, such as government institutions, and its effects on its citizens. First, let's go ahead and talk about the distribution of land. The distribution of land is strongly predicated on the colonial days of Honduras. Prior to the inception of Honduras being an actual country, Honduras territory was actually a colony of Spain. Like any colonizing nation, Spain's crown will go ahead and grant land grants to its citizens and government officials in the new land that they had discovered. However, when Honduras gained independence in 1821, it inherited all this existing unequal distribution of land. Some of this land can actually be traced today through property titles. After the establishment of Honduras was very underdeveloped. The government of Honduras really desired economic growth to then develop the nation. So by the early 1900s, the government of Honduras started offering land grants, large land grants, to foreign agricultural firms. So in return, the government of Honduras could receive vital infrastructure such as railroad systems. However, this really unproportionately affected the rural communities. These rural communities are usually composed of, unskilled workers, as well as them being uneducated. And because of this, they are strongly dependent on agriculture as a way to make a living. Additionally, poverty rates in Honduras are reaching close to 51%. However, the rural communities actually constitute close to 68% of those poverty rates. And this could be strongly attributed to the unequal distribution of land. By 1952, holdings of 5 hectare acres accounted less than 57% of all farms, but only controlled 81% of the land in agriculture. During the same time, 30% of all farms holding in excess of 500 hectare acres controlled 28.3% of the agricultural land. This doesn't include the 27% of rural economically active portion of the population that was landless. Because there was such a large gap in distribution of land, it caused tensions between the poor farmers and the large agricultural firms, which caused violence in the forms of murders, extortion, and also kidnapping. So between the 1950s and the 1990s, the government of Honduras had to come up with a solution to stop this violence and as well as alleviate the unequal distribution of land. So there was a great amount of laws that were proposed, but many didn't pass. And one of those was the Agrarian Reform Law of 1962, which planned to distribute private unproductive agricultural lands and government-owned agricultural lands. It only distributed 5 hectare acres or less to approximately 9% of rural families before the program closure in 1963 due to a military coup. Other similar laws to the Agrarian Reform Law were proposed, but most of them failed. The government of Honduras, understanding that the redistribution of land is more complex than it seems, they enacted government programs instead of trying to redistribute land. Programs like the Family Allowance Program and the Social Investment Fund. The Family Allowance Program was a large-scale food distribution for disadvantaged communities, while the Social Investment Fund funded the creation of new schools, health centers, and sanitation. However, this time period where agricultural reform was really being pushed ultimately failed because it never addressed or solved the unequal distribution of land or created new economic opportunities. So now in recent years, social spending has actually replaced the need for economic opportunities. Between 2006 and 2009, Honduras had sustained some of the highest economic growths, where it averaged close to 5% of growth in GDP. With this huge economic prosperity looming, the government of Honduras increased the social spending by 29%. During these years, the Gini coefficient, which is a model that it's a model that basically rates the different dimensions of inequality within a nation and gives it a rating factor of either a 0 or a 1. A 0 being absolutely equal and 1 being absolutely unequal. During these years, the Gini coefficient had decreased from a 0.576 to a 0.497, which is signifying less inequality, which poverty rates could attest to. The poverty rates in the same time frame decreased 7.7%, and extreme poverty rates decreased by 20.9%. However, by 2010, a military coup removed the liberal presidential administration and instituted a more conservative governing body. During the same time, Honduras was going through the global financial crisis, and because of this, it decreased the GDP growth. Because of this, the government of Honduras decreased the social spending from 13.3% of its GDP to 10.9%, leading the Gini coefficient to increase from 0.497 to 0.557 in 2011. Poverty rates mimic the same trend by increasing poverty 13.2% and extreme poverty by 26.3%. During the period of decreased social spending, we also see a simultaneous jump in the homicide rates per capita. In 2006, the homicide rate was 42% per capita, while by 2011, the homicide rate peaked at 58% per capita. While this isn't a coincidence that the homicide rate increased in these years in which social spending was cut, like the study of economics, one of the most notorious conclusions that we have came down to is that with less economic opportunities, there's going to be an increase in crime rate, which the unemployment rates could actually attribute to this. The unemployment rates from 2007 to 2009, specifically the age groups between 19 to 24 and 25 to 29 almost doubled. This is a reason for concern because Honduras is home to two of the biggest gangs in the world, which is the MS-13 and the Barrio 18. With them being highly involved in the global drug trade, most of these unemployed youths are going to gangs for economic opportunities. And because of this, we see a rampant increase in homicide rates. So as the unemployment looms and violence keeps amounting, Hondurans are forced to now migrate out of the country in search of better economic opportunities. And a clear example was the 2018 migrant caravan, where Hondurans left in mass waves of migration and explicitly stated that it's due to not enough economic opportunities and the growing violence that's going on in the country. So in conclusion, the study focus was to explain the current state of Honduras development by examining the factors that influence development, such as government institutions, and how the current state of economic development has affected the Honduran people. The results show that the inherited lands in the colonial days and the government's intervention in the distribution of land accounted for high rates of poverty in rural areas. Also, we see a strong correlation between social spending and inequality levels. The reason for that is primarily due to the lack of economic opportunities outside of the government spending. Additionally, we see the correlation between unemployment and homicide rates, in which the gangs are a catalyst to the increasing murder rate. Lastly, with the combined effects of unemployment and violence, we see mass migration from Honduras to escape the inequality and violence. Thank you.